Good morning. I'm Greg Cooley. I'm one of the Sunday school teachers here at First United Methodist Church in Corinth, Mississippi. We welcome you again as we talk about how God relates to us and we relate to God. In the last 5 or 6 lessons, we've talked about Job and a number of principles we've learned from Job's life and how Job went from being very successful to being very miserable, and how Job had a wife and friends that challenged him, and how that God waited 38 chapters to speak to him in the whirlwind. But today we're going to talk about the 6th principle related to Job. We must endure the crucible. We must endure. Who do you get your advice from? When you're trying to determine how to plant the tomatoes or strawberries, how to raise your children, how to finish the first 5K, how to handle the death of a loved one. Do you seek the advice of a novice, someone who's never done this sort of thing before? Do you seek the advice of an experienced warrior? Think about the last time you were actively involved in learning, the last time you were in the middle of your crucible. Who did you seek advice from? I don't know if you could say that Job actively sought advice from his wife and children. They were the ones who were around. They were the ones who were conveniently located when he was lamenting his situation, or when they felt like he needed to hear something as if it were coming from on high, from this silent God. And God was going to use them as his conduit. But if you were in Job's situation, if you are in the middle of your crucible, if you are facing a situation now that you don't have all the answers to or for, who are you going to get your advice from? Probably not that novice. Probably an experienced warrior. Probably somebody a little long in the tooth. Probably somebody with a couple of scars. Job was known to have gotten through, to have endured his challenge. And you want to be the same, don't you? You want to get through this thing. What do we know about Job? A number of things, and a number of things we've talked about, and a number of things have been the basis for our principles that we've gotten to up until number 6 now. We also know that in the book of James, over in the New Testament, Job is early on in the Old Testament. But over in the New Testament, in the book of James, James chapter 5, verse 11, we are simply told, "You've heard of the endurance of Job." And then the writer continues on with a point he needs to make to us about enduring and hanging in there and being an example. You've heard of the endurance of Job. One of the things about Job's endurance was that he didn't really fight his crucible. He did not try to escape it. He lamented it while it was there, but as we have spoken in the past, he appreciated it for what God had made it. God had made it an opportunity for Job to learn, and for us to learn from Job, and for Job's friends to grow through it too. It was an opportunity for Job to grow. So I go back to my question. Who do you seek your advice from? In the middle of your challenge, who do you seek your advice from? Who is your most trusted, experienced warrior? Do you know that's one of the reasons we have organized church, I believe? That God has set it that way. So that when you're in your 20s, 30s, and 40s and going through buying a home and starting a business and a career and rearing children, all of those challenges, you have people around you who love you, who can give you input. give you advice. Now, granted, some of that is advice you don't ask for, right? Some people are all too ready to tell you how to do things. I realize that. However, some of those people you trust and love, don't you? Family members, teachers, preachers, leaders, people who have been that example that you have watched from afar, and suddenly you need to run up to them and say, you know, when you face this with your child, when you faced this with your spouse, what did you do? Yeah, we need those people in our lives. We need those people there to help us endure our challenges. So what is endurance? What's the difference between an endurance race and a sprint? You know, here's the sprint, and the coach tells you try everything you can for the next 10 to 20 seconds, and it'll be over. Just give me your all. We've had those experiences in our lives too, right? Little endurance bursts that we needed. Get through this interview. Just make sure you make it through today. Those endurance needs that are just little sprints. But what about the marathon of life? Is the marathoner really that concerned about who's leading the race at mile 3? Or who's leading the race at mile 7 or 11? Oh, the endurance runner may be trying to position themselves and draft a little bit and find themselves in the pack and want to be where they want to be in the stack, but they're probably not that concerned about who's leading. They're concerned about their nutrition and their hydration and how well they feel and the temperature of the day, and do they need to be discarding one of these layers of clothes. That's what they're thinking about. And that's what you're doing when you're living your life as if it were an endurance event, a long-range event, thinking of the long term and how today it may not be that important that I win this argument. It's so important that I keep this relationship. Let me say that again. For the endurance runner, it's not necessarily important that they win to the race between here to the corner. They still have 10 more miles to go at mile 16. It's not that important that I win every discussion with my wife or my business partner or my friends or the people in the committee, my neighbor. It's very important that I keep my positioning in the pack, that I keep my relationships. That's what the endurance life liver will think. I think that's what Job thought. There he sat. His wife, his 3 friends, just berating him with all the things he could have done and should have done, and why God is not answering him, and why there's such silence from above. He didn't see it necessary to win every argument. When I'm self-assured in my relationship with God and with my fellow man, I don't have to win every argument. I have to keep my positioning, though. Now, there are some significant mileposts where I know here comes the rain. I'm in the middle of this marathon. I probably don't need to be on the inside where the curb and the gutter is. So I probably need to move out here. And so, yeah, I may need to change my positioning and change where I am in the pack. And there are times in your life you may need to change where you are in the pack. Maybe God calls you from going from this church to that church. Maybe God calls you from going from this town to that town, or taking your children from this school to that school. That's possible, yes. But make sure God is in it, and not your need for comfort or your need to win a present argument. Make sure it's of God, the change that God wants in your life. And make sure the things you want are the things God wants, not necessarily something you want so you can turn this marathon into a sprint. Because I'll tell you, I've finished a few marathons. I don't think I can recall one of them that was really fun in the middle of it. Now at the end, when they give me the medal and they wrap the blanket around me and I have the Powerade at the end, now I can talk with my friends, and it seems the chatter sounds like all that was fun to the novice. And I'm telling you, if you asked each one of the marathoners, they'd say, oh boy, at mile 16 and at mile 17, mile 20, whew, I didn't know if I could finish that last 10K. But when you start, you must endure. You must finish. That's what God wants from you and me, that we must finish this thing. And in the middle of the finishing, you can probably learn something. At the end, you can stop and talk to all of those individual marathoners. And you can ask them, the next time you run one of these things, how would you do it differently? I bet you most of them can tell you something they learned today that will help them. I'm not going to wear that kind of hat anymore. I'm not going to wear those sorts of gloves. I'm going to make sure that next time I have a little bit of nutrition in my waistband. And that's what God intends for you and me with this endurance event of life, that we learn along the way. The point of this crucible of life, this endurance event, is really three things: change, development, and example. And if you'll think back on the major challenges of your life, at least one of those, if not all three of them, could characterize that challenge. There's probably something I could learn and I could change. There's probably some way I can implement that change so now I develop. And there's probably some way I can be an example to somebody else. Maybe now I can be that long-in-the-tooth person that is asked for advice by somebody else. And so the beat goes on. So what about the beat of your life? Has it been interrupted by a couple of things over the last few months? Yeah, probably so. Has it been challenged? Does your life from time to time feel like a crucible? Yeah. Do you desperately want this to turn into a sprint? It's not gonna, if you do it right, if you don't quit. Oh, I can decide at mile 16, I'm going to run to the end of this corner. I'm going to give it all I've got to the end of this corner, and then I'm just going to step off the course. I can do that. Yeah, I have the freedom to do that. But I don't have the sweet feel of completing the event. I'm not going to be as respected by my fellow runners. I'm not going to respect myself, probably. I'm not going to have learned anything and changed anything and developed anything. So no, I don't want to turn this endurance event into a sprint. I want desperately to know this principle. Principle number 6, I must endure and finish. Run with strength this race that I'm called to. In your life, the challenges that you've faced over the last few months, have there been a few opportunities for learning, for changing, for developing, for becoming an example? I'm sure there have. And if you haven't consciously noticed them, stop just a moment and think, is there something I could change? Maybe my attitude, maybe my approach, maybe the people I ask for advice. I've been bullheadedly trying to do this on my own and not asking for advice. Maybe I can change that about myself. Is there a way for me to develop and become a better Christian, a better example, a better leader, a better person? I'm sure there is for all of us. So today, as you face your day, remember it's an endurance event. Remember you don't have to win every sprint. Just keep your positioning until God changes you and moves you. And remember that this change can bring development and it can bring example. Because we all need those, don't we? God bless you. Have a great day.